my name is Alex. I am a knitter coming to you from Vancouver, Canada. And today I wanted to talk to you about my most repeatable knitting patterns, or the patterns that I have made the most in my relatively short knitting career. I thought that this could be kind of an interesting video in lieu of a holiday gift guide because we are barreling towards December 1st as I am filming this. So it's a little bit late to be posting a holiday gift guide. I imagine most of you who are gift knitting are either well underway or already have your plans set. And for those of you who are planning to gift knit but have not started and don't know what you're making, Godspeed. Wishing you the best of luck. And maybe this video will give you a little bit of inspiration for some projects that could be giftable, could be repeatable. My idea here is kind of like the patterns that I've gotten the most use of that have proven themselves to be like really worth the investment. Of course, this could be any knitting pattern, any one that you liked to make and that you want to make multiple times. Like, you know, you're getting your cost per use from those patterns that you're making more than once. And I am wearing a couple of my repeated patterns, which I will get into shortly. But just before we begin, I did kind of set out a bit of a criteria to assess these patterns and assess why I want to knit some patterns and maybe don't want to repeat others. So the first criteria is the ease of use. So when you're reading the pattern, how easy is it for you to understand? Are you able to grasp the techniques? Do you like the way that it's written? If so, then the chances are pretty high that you might want to make it again. The second criteria, and I guess arguably but the most important, if we are putting it in order of importance, would be the enjoyment. So do you enjoy the process of making this piece? And then paired with that, I didn't separate these could have been separated, but paired with them is the satisfaction. Are you satisfied with the finished piece that you've made? I think those kind of go hand in hand. Of course, there can be things that you knit that you really enjoy making, but then in the end, maybe you're not satisfied with the end product. Conversely, there are things that I've made where I don't necessarily enjoy the process, but undeniably, I really like the finished result. So that's factor number two. I mean, we'll call it just one, but I know that's kind of two different things. So we had ease, enjoyment, and then the third is the time investment. So are you able to knit whatever it is up in a reasonable amount of time? Reasonable for you. So, and this is gonna really depend on what you're making. So obviously, like, an accessory tends to take less time than a garment, but you know, there are plenty of different types of garments that take more or less time than others. And I think that if you're keen to repeat knitting something you've already made, chances are it's something that doesn't take a huge amount of time. Chances are, just a guess. And our fourth factor is affordability. And again, hugely subjective, hugely based on one's own budget, how much you want to invest in a piece for yourself or how much you want to invest in a piece for someone else. But I think the ability to make something at an affordable price point definitely also affects whether or not you want to repeat that pattern. Okay, the last factor is versatility. Can the piece work for multiple different types of people? Multiple ages, multiple genders? Is it kind of like style agnostic or have that sort of universality, or it could be appealing to many different types of people, and the size spectrum? So those are my five kind of criteria that I'm assessing the repeatable patterns in my life. First things first, let's start with what's on my head. This is the Orbit hat by Rose Knitwear. This is the one that I kept for myself, but I actually knit this 3 times last year. I made them all in pretty quick succession. I will link all of the patterns below so that you can look at the specifics. I knit this up at the very beginning of the year. I'm just seeing now, I didn't actually remember this, but this was my New Year's cast on last year. I cast it on January 1st and I finished it on January 5th. So if we're looking at the time commitment criteria, very low time commitment. Mind you, this was my third time knitting this pattern. I first knit it for my sister for Christmas, and then for my boss for Christmas, and then I knit this for myself. And I used two different types of drops yarn. I used drops Wish in the color, I don't remember. I'll have to look it up because I know drops Wish is a discontinued yarn, but White Fog, I want to say, I don't know, I'll have to correct myself in the description box below. And then the second color was a drops Air in the gray. Again, I unfortunately did not write the color names, but I used one skein of each. So in terms of the affordability, also very affordable, and that's part of the appeal for this pattern. With my sisters, I used the same drops Wish, though in the white color, and I used another drops Wish in a blue color. And for my bosses, I used the same. Okay, I guess I should give some context. I had frogged my holiday slipover by Petite Knit that I had knit in drops Wish. So I frogged that, so I had all of this kind of white or off-white colored yarn. So I decided to make all of these toques with my frogged Wish. For my boss's toque, I used the white and used one skein, or actually I think I ended up buying two skeins of drops Snow in this deep chocolate brown color. Unfortunately, I don't have photos of my sisters and my boss's toques. Yeah, I just wasn't like super great at documenting all of my projects, but you can see this one. This one's very cute. I do feel a little bit bad about the one I gave to my sister. It's a little bit of a mess. I did make her other things since, and I plan to make her more things. So, and she's very supportive of my knitting. So I think, you know, she's a very gracious gift receiver. If we go through the criteria for the orbit hat, it took me a while to get a hang of this stitch pattern, but it's not hard. It just took me a while to understand what I was doing. So the first time that I made it, it was a little bit of a mess, not gonna lie. Sorry, Eden. The second time I made it, I basically understood it. My boss's one turned out much better. And the reason why I made it 3 times is because it's super fun to knit up. Again, it's affordable. It does not take a lot of time. It's a little bit specific, I guess, in terms of style. I wouldn't say it's like the most versatile. I don't know that everyone would like to wear a hat like this, but I think that it's very cool. I think for the, you know, if somebody likes kind of a quirkier hat, then I think it's great. But in terms of the other criteria, enjoyment / satisfaction high, affordability high, time commitment low, which is a good thing. So that's what makes this pattern very repeatable. I'm going to continue on with my other accessories. I think accessories are the most obvious type of repeatable patterns because of that generally lower time commitment than a garment, and versatility and potential affordability. But let's go to my next most repeated pattern. I think this one takes the cake in terms of repeated the most number of times. This was 3. My next one is the weekend hat, and I knit this 4 times. All right, so I'm gonna show you a couple of hats here, and you're gonna be like, that doesn't really look like the weekend hat, and you would be right. So the 2 weekend hats that I made that are, you know, I wouldn't say perfect, but the best examples of weekend hats were gifts. So I made my first weekend hat back in the spring of 2024, and I used leftover yarn that I had from my Novice slipover. I had Sandnes Garn Double Sunday and Sailor in the Dark and the matching tin silk mohair. And so I made my first weekend hat, and I ended up gifting that to my friend Allison for her birthday, which is in April. So I made it, you know, probably March-ish 2024, and sent that off to her. And then after that, I made kind of these like modified weekend hats, we'll say. So this one I knit, oh my gosh, this is again drops Wish in that same color. So this is again from the frogged or the leftover yarn from the holiday slipover. This might have just been leftover. I don't know if this was frogged. This might have just been like skeins that were left over. But yeah, you'll see I didn't do the triple folded brim. I just did one fold. and I used a very different yarn weight. This is like bulky, and the weekend hat I think is for either DK or worsted. But I think I followed the same numbers, and I did the like decreases on the top. So it's weekend hat adjacent. It's weekend hat inspired. So that's number 1, and I kept this one. I haven't worn it for a long time, but yeah, just to use up that yarn. It's cute. I think I made it a little too short for me, but that's okay. This was the 3rd one that I made, and you'll see I'm in the process of frogging it. This I made for Chris, my boyfriend, for Christmas last year. I made him 2 toques, and the other toque I will talk about shortly. But I made this too small, and again, I only did a single fold. And yeah, I was just not happy with it. He was not really wearing it a ton because it is just a little too tight for him. But the yarn is so nice. It's really pretty. It's this beautiful berry color, and this is from Barocco. It's their Ultra Alpaca, the DK weight. And I think this one is called Mixed Berries, but I'll put it in the description box. But again, yeah, so not really a traditional weekend hat. The brim is shorter than it was before because I've already started frogging it. But my plan is to finish frogging this and remake it for him. And then the last time I made the weekend hat, I actually showed a photo of it in my last podcast episode, so my video from last week, and I'll put a photo of it here. So this one I made for my friend Allison, who I made the first weekend hat for. I made it for her husband. Allison actually commissioned me to make this toque for her husband because after I made her weekend hat, he kind of fell in love with it. Yeah, he just really likes it. So she asked if I would make him one, and she paid for the yarn and paid me a little bit of money to make it, which was really nice. And that one is like my best example. I made sure to make that one really nice. So I don't think he's received it yet because I think that is part of his Christmas gift this year. So hopefully he likes it. Something that was pretty funny that she showed me after she had already asked me to make it for him was a text from him that said, with a photo of her hat, that said, "Where did you get this hat? I would pay big money for this." So I think he'll like it. I'm really excited for him to get that one. And that is my most polished version of the weekend hat. So let's go through a little bit of the criteria. Ease of use. The pattern's really easy to understand, no issues. Even as a beginner knitter, it was fine. The one thing that I did find a little confusing, just because I was pretty inexperienced when I made it the first time, was I didn't really understand the rows of double knitting to create those folds for the triple folded brim. I don't know that I did that correctly on the first toque that I did, and then obviously I didn't do triple folded for the other two, so I don't think that I really did the rows of double knitting. I did it once here, and then I did do it properly for Mitch's toque, but for the most part, ease was great. Enjoyment. Here's where we get a little a bit of a hiccup. I don't enjoy making this toque. I don't enjoy 1x1 rib, especially like a whole thing. You know, it's one thing to do 1x1 rib for the hem or the cuff of a garment. I don't really mind that, but just knitting 1x1 rib the entire time I find so tedious. So I don't really enjoy the weekend hat pattern per se. You know, where I've kind of like joined the enjoyment and the satisfaction. That's where these things kind of butt heads. So I don't love knitting it, but I do, at least when I've done it properly, I do really like the finished outcome, the finished hat. I think it's super polished. I think it's very versatile. I've made it for, you know, men, women. I think anyone, any gender would really like this, and there's good sizing for this one as well. So in terms of the versatility piece, high versatility. I think people of like any style, like any kind of style aesthetic would enjoy this toque. And there is something about a ribbed toque, or beanie for my American or I don't know what word people use in Europe to use beanie or hat. I know toque is very Canadian, and I'll probably keep saying that just out of habit, but I think people, so many different types of people would like the weekend hat. There's something about a ribbed hat that just feels I don't know, cool. I don't know a different word, but for some reason it does feel like cooler than just a stockinette hat. I don't know why. It just does. It also looks like it could be store-bought as well, which is another nice touch. Maybe that's why. Maybe most store-bought hats are ribbed, like 1x1 rib. I don't know. I don't know. I'd have to like look into that a little bit more. But yeah, the weekend hat is my most repeated pattern. It checks all the boxes except for enjoyment of making for me. But because because I can make it very affordably, it doesn't take up a lot of yarn. It's very, very giftable. It doesn't take a huge amount of time. It takes more time than I would want it to. It always feels like a bit of a slog because I'm not really enjoying it. But I think like for Mitch's toque, for example, I think it only took me 2 weeks to knit up, which is not a super long time. So definitely would recommend. And if you are a fan of 1x1 rib, like go off, make like 10. They're awesome. Okay. I guess there's quite a few patterns that I've made 3 times in terms of the accessories. Sophie scarf is the next one. So the Sophie scarf, this is the one that I kept for me. This I made out of, it's a rowan yarn. I'll put the name below because I don't remember the name of it, but I know it is a merino cashmere blend, but it does have acrylic in it, which is part of why I don't love this. But this is a Sophie pattern by Petite Knit. Everyone knows it. Everyone's made it. Or if you haven't made it, then you for sure know about it and have heard a lot about it. So I won't talk about it too much, but I have made this 3 times. I made it for myself. I made it for my friend Alistair for his birthday. And I made it for my sister Eliane for her birthday. And so in terms of criteria, easy to understand. Again, this is where this pattern kind of falls in the ranking for me. I don't totally enjoy making it because you do really need to keep track of the number of rows based on the decreases. And I don't love a garter stitch piece. I don't mind it in this context. I think it looks pretty cute. I think it's really, really great for beginners. We all know this. But yeah, I just, especially after making other scarves, there's just other ones that I enjoy the look of more and also enjoy the process of making more. So, and then satisfaction, I don't really wear this, especially compared to my other scarves. I'm not really drawn to wearing this. I don't find a small scarf like this that useful. I know this is also very subjective. Tons of people love wearing their Sophie scarf and do find it really not only useful in terms of like keeping them warm, but also very like versatile and like add something to an outfit. Like the styling aspect is really useful. But for me, I just don't find that. Again, kind of like lower in the ranks for enjoyment and satisfaction. Affordability can be super high. You don't need a lot of yarn for this. You can use many different types of yarn for this. So that's high. Versatility, I think, is also high. I think there's, assuming the person you're making it for likes a small scarf, then I think the versatility is pretty high. I know like small scarves tend to be more like feminine leaning. So, but again, I made one for my friend Alistair and he wears it and he likes it and he's gotten compliments on it, he's told me, which is really, really nice. I made his out of Satin Duo. So that's a cotton merino blend. And I made it in a really nice color. I don't have a photo of his, but I can insert the one I made for my sister Eliane for her birthday. I made hers out of leftover yarn that I had from my lace loop sweater. So I made hers in Knitting for Olive merino and soft silk mohair, both in the color Dusty Aqua. It's super cute. I don't know how much wear she gets out of that, to be honest. I haven't asked her. I don't want to put her on the spot. But I don't know, it's nice. It's a very giftable item, so good choice there. But again, I think there are potentially better options depending on who you're making it for and what your personal style is. Which leads me on to my favorite scarf, which I have brought up and shown in at least 2 other videos. So I won't go on and on about this, but this is my Alex scarf. This is a pattern by Knitting for Olive. I made this in a DK weight yarn and I followed the large scarf pattern, One thing that I really like about this pattern is you get options for 3 different sizes: a small scarf, a medium scarf, and a large scarf. And I really like that they offer that. You can make 3 different types of Alex scarves if you want. So again, the cost per use of that pattern could be super low if you're making like different types. And again, I've made this one 3 times, so I already feel like my cost per use is pretty low for that pattern. And I knit this first for my friend M for their birthday. I knit the small version for them. I knit my sister Sarah. Oh, and for M's, I used 1 skein of the Knitting for Olive. I don't remember the official name for this yarn, but it's their recycled wool. And I used a very beautiful kind of foresty green color for theirs. Again, I don't have photos for all these. I apologize. For my sister, I used 1 skein of a Drops yarn. I'm tempted to say it was Drops Puno. I know that I got it on sale at the local yarn store, my local yarn store, and it was this really interesting like cantaloupe orange color. And so I knit her the small version of the Alex scarf, and then for mine, I knit myself the large version, and I used this very, very gorgeous yarn that I've talked about a couple of times from Windswept Fiber and Design. This is an alpaca cashmere merino. Is it? Yeah, I think it's alpaca cashmere merino. Anyway, it's so soft. I wear this every day. Now that it's like been cold enough, I've been wearing this every single day. Every time I go out, this gets so much wear. And this is a 2x2 ribbed scarf, and I prefer 2x2 ribbing so much more than 1x1 ribbing. 2x2 all day, every day. I can do it. I don't know, there's something about the flow of 2x2 ribbing that's just so much more enjoyable, so much more intuitive for me than 1x1. So highly recommend. So again, back to the criteria. The pattern's easy to understand. It's very modifiable as well. I didn't use the right yarn weight for this. You're supposed to use, I believe, like a worsted weight. I used a DK, and I just modified it to be the length and width that I wanted. So yeah, very versatile in that respect, and easy to understand. Enjoyment of making this high, especially if you're knitting it with like either a fun color or a very tactilely, I don't think that's a word, but a very pleasing yarn. This was so soft to knit up. I loved working on it. And then with M's and Sarah's, like the colors were really fun, so that kept me engaged. So enjoyment was high. Satisfaction for this one so high. I hope it's high for them too. I don't know. I'm too shy to ask like, hey, do you like that? But it might be good to know. Just, for future reference, if I'm knitting for them again, it would probably be good to know if they actually enjoyed those small scarves. Anyway, that's besides the point. Affordability, again, because you can make this in various sizes, you can make this very affordably. You can easily make this for the small one. You can easily make it in 1 skein of yarn. Fingering weight yarn goes a long way. Time commitment, this took me like 2 weeks to make the large one. Mind you, I was knitting on it quite a lot, but yeah, not a super high time commitment. And I do think that the 2x2 rib, the ability to make it in larger sizes, the customizability, again, is just very versatile. I imagine people of any gender, any age could get a lot of wear out of this. So highly, highly recommend. All right, one more scarf. This is scarf number 4 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And I knit this using Drops Nepal in a gray color. I like this one a lot. I really liked making this. This was my second time knitting this scarf. The first one that I knit for my auntie for her birthday, and I knit it in a beige color. I can insert a photo here. I knit it in Drops Puno and some leftover tin silk mohair in the print. But this is a really fun mixture of stockinette and garter. So the texture is just really fun to knit up. The pattern's very easy to understand. The enjoyment was high. I'm pretty satisfied with the ending result, but I think that I could have made it either bigger or possibly wider. I don't actually wear this one a ton, That might also have to do with the yarn that I used. I think even though this is an alpaca yarn, I think that it's just not quite as like drapey as I would want it, but it's still pretty cute. And now that I've got it on, I really don't mind it. Chick, do you mind? Do you mind? I would say to me, and this is again very subjective, and I don't want to be super binary here, but to me, triangle scarves do read more feminine, especially a textured scarf like this. But that is, I don't know, maybe I just need to open my mind a little bit. Maybe there's like other, you know, maybe men or other folk wouldn't find this particularly feminine. I think it also really depends on, you know, the color that you're making it in. Scarves are scarves, you know, there's no gender to a scarf. Anyone can wear it. Again, pretty affordable. I think I used 2 skeins for each of those scarves, and time commitment, not super high. I can check. All right, so I started my gray scarf, my scarf number 4, on March 27th, and I finished it on April 10th. That said, I know I was definitely working on other projects at the same time. So if I was knitting monogamously, which I basically never do at this point, it probably wouldn't have taken me that long. But you know, that's only 2 weeks anyway. So that's a pretty good turnaround. And for my auntie's scarf, I started it on November 1st of 2024, and I finished it on November 21st. And so yeah, 20 days. And again, I was working on other things as well. Pretty low time commitment, I would say. All right, so that covers the accessories. Let's move on to garments. So unfortunately, all of my garments I've kind of stashed away over here. So I do need to move Little Tick, which is kind of a shame since she just settled down and she was so hyper before, and now she's just chilling. She's just sitting on my lap purring. So I apologize, Tutu. I apologize, I gotta move you. Okay, bye little one. You say hello? Can you say hello? Look at that little face. She's so cute. Okay. Okay, Tutu. So I would say the step up from accessories when we're moving into garments, the most repeatable patterns are going to be sleeveless. So that brings me on to my first repeated garment pattern. This is my Novice vest, my Novice slipover by Petite Knit. I've mentioned this one in my top 5 faves and flops video. That was my second video. So I won't go on too much about this, but this was my second garment that I ever made, and I love this. I still wear this all the time. This I knit up in Double Sunday Sailor in the Dark and Tin Silk Mohair in Navy. Yeah, I love this. Super versatile, easy to understand. The pattern's great. The pattern is for beginners, super easy to understand. I had no trouble with it, even though it was only my second ever garment. Highly more satisfied than I could have imagined, I think, being someone who didn't really wear like sweater vests before. Huge high satisfaction for this vest. I'd say it's super versatile. Like, this is very style and gender agnostic. This like anyone could wear this. You just make it in the proper size for whoever you're making it for. Highly wearable. Relatively affordable, of course. Yeah, this is always going to be subjective. It depends what you decide to use, but it doesn't require a huge amount of yarn, so it can be super affordable. And I know that this took me like a little while because like I said, it was my second ever garment, but I know that Knitting with Ev just made this exact pattern, the Novice slipover, for her sister, and it only took her like 10 days or 2 weeks or something. So it can be a very fast project depending on what else you're working on and your general speed and amount of time you have for knitting in general, but not a huge time commitment. And so this was my first one, and like I said, this is all about repeated patterns, so I did make this one again. This was my Christmas present to my mom last year. I made her a Novice slipover in a very similar color, just a slightly lighter blue. I used Pure Ghent and Midnight Soul. I made hers in the small size, which I think would just be the second size, and mine in the third size or size medium. was really not good at documenting colors here. I will insert photos, but it looks super similar to mine. It is a little bit lighter. I didn't have like the best lighting for the photos, and it took me about, is that 20 days? I started it on November 25th, 2024, and I finished it on November 14th, 2024. I need to edit my Ravelry because it says I finished it in 2025, December 14th, 2025, but it did not take me 13 months. I just got the year wrong. That only took me about, like, what is that, 20 days or something? Super easy and highly recommend. All right, so this next pattern, these next two garments I did also show in my top 5 faves of 2025. This is the mini mock neck tank by Jessie Made Designs. This is the first one that I made in Knitting for Olive, Poppy Blue, and the Merino. And this is the second one that I made in Santa's Garden Sunday in brown color. I can't remember the name of the color. Easy pattern to follow. I would say the enjoyment of making this pattern is on the lower end. Only because it is a fingering weight garment, so it can feel like it takes a long time. It actually didn't take me very long to knit this up. I think it was about a month or like less than a month for both, but because you're knitting in stockinette on a fingering weight with a fingering weight yarn, not super small needles, I think it was maybe US 3, I'll double check, but yeah, it feels a little bit tedious, but it's not the worst, and most of it is just knitting stockinette in the round. So unless you find that like mind-numbingly boring, then it's not bad. And the satisfaction for this garments, which is why I made it twice for myself, is high. I got a lot of wear out of these. I think it would be even more wear if I had made it in cotton merino, but I really like it in merino. I love layering with this. Affordability is high. It only took me less than 2 skeins both times that I made it. So again, depending on what yarn you're using, you could make it pretty affordably. Versatility is not as high because the fit is very important. So I wouldn't say this is necessarily like a very giftable pattern unless you know the size of whoever you're making it for. And I would say this is definitely leans more feminine. So I don't know that like masculine leaning people would like really like this garment, but I could totally be wrong. So, and then not super age versatile because it's, it's an adult pattern, but yeah, highly recommend that one. That's just a wardrobe staple, and I could totally see myself making more of those. Okay, so just to tell you the needle sizes, the mini mock neck tank uses US 4 3.5 millimeter and US 2 2.75 millimeter. And yeah, really great size range on this one, extra small to 5XL. So in terms of size range, hugely versatile. In terms of versatility for style, it's specific, but I do think it is very versatile. Like I can wear it in many different ways. I find it easy to like dress up and dress down, to pair with different, usually I'm layering it with a cardigan. I get a lot of wear out of both of them, so highly recommend. So this brings me to my not my final repeated pattern, but the final one that I have to like fully show you that I have fully made more than once. This is the Sabai sweater by Suzanne Mueller. And this was my first finished object in my last podcast episode. So my podcast episode from last week, if you missed it, I knit this up for my friend Karen in a really beautiful yarn, a cream colored merino silk yarn from Durarum Natura in the color cream. And the yarn is called Penelope. So that yarn is very different than the yarn that I used to make mine. I made this out of yarn that I bought from Newfoundland. So I bought the yarn for this scarf and the yarn for this sweater from the same maker, from the Artisan Loft in St. John's, Newfoundland. And these are both from Windswept Fibers and Design. And both of these yarns are so beautiful. Sorry, I'm always like cuddling up to this. I just love it so much. So I already talked about this, I won't go on about it again. But this is gorgeous yarn. I'll put up the name of the yarn here. I know that this color is called Fog, and the composition of this yarn is so interesting. I'm gonna see, you can kind of see a little bit of the halo. I don't know if you can see any of the linen fibers. There's some here. You can kind of see that poking out. But this is a superwash linen and keeps trying to say yak. Let me try that again. This is a superwash linen and yak blend. So it's a little bit more of like, I would say, kind of a summer yarn with that linen. And I know that yak is supposed to be really good for, I mean, similar to other wools, but really good for, supposed to be very like temperature regulating, or at least that's what I've heard. I know that it can keep you super warm, but it's also very breathable. So this top I definitely was getting more wear out of in the late summer and autumn. I'm not wearing this a ton right now just because it's not quite warm enough, but I love this sweater. I love the design. I really, really like it in this charcoal gray. Let me show you the neckline. Got a boat neck here. I find it very flattering. It's got a really nice shoulder construction, drop shoulder, and I knit mine pretty cropped, you can see. Yeah, very versatile in terms of like dressing up and dressing down. Again, this is more of a feminine style of garment. I found this pattern to be very easy to knit up, like very, very easy to understand. The construction was intuitive, no issues at all, and enjoyment was high, satisfaction very high. Affordability, it depends what you're using. You can make it affordably, but obviously this is a long sleeve garment, so it is going to be a bit more of an investment because you are going to be needing upwards of like, depending on what size you're using, you're going to be needing 1,000 meters plus of yarn. So a bit less affordable, I guess, than you know, making a vest or making an accessory, but highly recommend if this is something that you know that you would like, or if there's someone in your life that you know would like something like this. I gave Karen her Sabai sweater just on the weekend, and she tried it on and it fits her and it looks great on her, and she sent me a text the day after, or maybe a couple days after I gave it to her, saying that she wore it to work that day, and one of her students said that it was very elegant and she was quite taken by it. So that was a huge compliment. This did not take me a lot of time to knit. I started it July 18th, 2025, and I finished it August 25th, 2025. And I used windswept fibers come from Away. I have written down that I used 3 skeins, but I know that I have yarn left over. So I used under 1,200 meters. I had about 1,200 meters total, but I know I think I may even have like most of one skein left. So I think I might have even used closer to like 1,000 meters, but I'll have to check. And yes, this is in the color Fog Gray, and it is 75% superwash merino, 15% linen, and 10% yak. All right, so that wraps up all of the garments that I have repeated and completed. Now, I do have a few that I am currently repeating, so I'm going to go through those quickly. Some of these you will have already seen and heard about in my previous podcast episodes, so I won't go on too long about them, but let's just go through them real quick just for fun. All right, you would have seen this in my top 5 faves, my Norma sweater. I love her. She is the best. She is so warm and cozy and cool and stylish. This is the Norma sweater by My Favorite Things Knitwear. Hugely popular design. I won't go on too long about it. If you want to know more about the pattern, I've linked the Ravelry page down below, so please go check it out. I used Sandnes Garn Double Sunday in Sailor in the Dark and Tin Silk Mohair in Navy for the main color. I used Sandnes Garn Pure Gint in Sunny Lime, that bright green color, and Sunny Lime Tin Silk Mohair. The gray stripe is leftover from my Clotilde cardigan that I knit in Prairie Fire Alpaca cashmere merino yarn, and I paired it with Knitting for Olive mohair in the color Morning Haze. So that is all the yarn. I knit the 3rd size for myself, size medium. I love this so much. So fun to knit. Enough said about that. I am currently knitting the Norma sweater for my mom. And if you caught last week's podcast episode, you know that I've had some pretty big mishaps with this. So since I filmed last week, I have frogged up to the underarms, and I have cast on the number of stitches for the 3rd size instead of the 2nd size. And I am still, I'm off gauge. I am still under the recommended number of inches for positive ease, but I think I have reached a point where I think I will be fine for my mom. I am playing it a little fast and loose here, folks. Would I recommend doing that? No. No, I wouldn't. But that's the thing about knitting. We've all got our own free will, and we have to kind of work on things and fix things the way that we know how to and what seems right for us. So would I recommend doing what I'm doing? Of course not. Of course not. But I do think, based on the measurement that I'm getting across here, I do think it'll fit my mom just fine. I think she will like it. So of course I will continue to update you as I complete this project. And I am hoping to finish this by Christmas. So it really is crunch time at this point. If you didn't see my last episode, I'll run through this really quickly. This is Knitting for Olive merino and soft silk mohair in the color Buttercup for the main color. The blue stripe is Holst Garn Coast in the color California Blue, with Knitting for Olive's Poppy Blue in soft silk mohair. The white stripe is Knitting for Olive merino and soft silk mohair in just undyed. And it's beautiful. It's looking super cute, very bright. This is going to be a nice, these colors actually remind me of the prairies. I wonder if this is why my mom loves these colors so much. Like canola fields, and the blue sky, beautiful blue sky and clouds. Anyway, honestly, I would make this pattern again. It's so fun. The stripes just make it so much fun. The ease of making it, I would say, hi. This was my first ever color work garment. I know some people, when I've heard people talk about this in the past, they say that they wish there was a chart. Even as a beginner knitter, because I knit this last year, or no, I always say that. It feels like last year. I knit this earlier this past year. I'd never done a color work sweater before, but I had no issues without a chart. But I guess we all understand and learn things differently. So huge enjoyment factor. This one is so fun to knit. Huge satisfaction. I love wearing this still. I mean, it's not that old, but I can foresee me wearing this for years and years. Like I plan and I want to always have this. I mean, assuming that my body doesn't change too much and I can fit into it for a long time, this is just like a forever piece. I love it so much. In terms of like age and gender, I could see maybe making some adjustments to the fit and that like fitting multiple genders. I don't think there's like kid sizing for it, so not super versatile in that way. But again, I'm making this for my mom, who is, older than me. She's in a very different life stage than I am, but I think stylistically, like, she'll still really enjoy it. I think that people of and I've seen people, like, I actually complimented a girl on the bus who was wearing the Norma, and she looked much younger than me, or, at least like 10 years younger than me. So I feel like age-wise, it's like super versatile. I think like anyone of any age would like this, assuming that it is your style. It definitely is more feminine leaning, but I don't think that it's like super specifically feminine. Like, I feel like anyone could wear this and love it. So I would say it's highly versatile. I guess where it falls a little bit is the affordability piece, but of course, right? Because it's a full garment, it's a full sweater. You're using, 3 different colors. So a little bit less on the affordable end potentially, but again, you can get yarn at various different price points. So that is potentially an adjustable factor. So I've got another accessory for you. I had to specifically ask Chris not to wear this today, and he ended up trying on a bunch of his other toques to figure out what to wear, because he almost wears this every single day. This is the ribbed beanie by Maker. I knit this for him for Christmas last year, and had also made him that weekend hat that I'm currently frogging. But luckily this one was a hit. It's held up so well. I mean, there's like hair on it, but like it hasn't really pilled at all. It's looking really, really good. I don't remember exactly what yarn I used. I think I used, I want to say a Barocco yarn. I kept no notes for this hat. That's unfortunate. But from memory, I used a Barocco merino, a DK merino. I think it was Barocco. And I used a Blue Sky Fibers Surrey alpaca. And it's so soft and it hasn't pilled at all. It looks fantastic. This is I knitted a little bit short. He likes more of kind of like a watch cap style toque. And this is pretty big. Like it's much bigger, like fitted over top of. Okay, that's very silly, but it's way too big for me on my head. It looks crazy, but Chris has a larger head than I do. It fits him perfectly. That leads me to the toque that I'm knitting for my friend Nathan. I'm using the same pattern. This is my favorite vibe, right? 2x2 rib. And this is in the Knitting for Olive Merino Hazel held double to achieve that DK weight gauge. I've just started this. Well, I mean, not just. I've been knitting on this for about a week or so. If I fold it, I still have quite a ways to go. But it shouldn't take too long. Let's go through the criteria. It's easy to follow. It's a free pattern as well. So in terms of the affordability, high, even higher than a paid pattern. Highly enjoyable. I love doing 2x2 rib. Highly satisfied with the outcome, and so is my boyfriend. I do think that there's something about this kind of 2x2 rib that does lean a little bit more masculine, and maybe it's less to do with the 2x2 rib and more to do with like the watch cap, the height of the toque. Time commitment, not very high. So I started this on November 15th of 2024, and I finished this on December 3rd of 2024. And if you'll remember from my other projects, I was also knitting on my auntie's scarf at that time and my mom's vest. So I for sure was not knitting monogamously. If I was, all of those three things would have taken less time. But regardless, you know, just about 2 weeks for this. Very, very quick. This was like a little bit more expensive because I kind of splashed out for the yarn. But this one I'm knitting using 2 skeins of Knitting for Olive. And I think if you just use one single skein of DK, or sorry, I think if you just use one single strand of DK, you may or may not still need 2 skeins to have enough meterage. But again, you can get really affordable DK weight yarn. I didn't actually pay for this yarn because Nathan paid for it for me to make it for him. But if I had, I think it was only like, I think Knitting for Olive Merino is like roughly $15, like a little bit under $15 Canadian. So that would have been like, you know, about $30, maybe a little bit less than 30 or a little over 30 with taxes. I'm not 100% sure. I did end up paying duties for this, which was kind of a bummer, but I'm not going to include that in the cost because you can probably find yarn in your local area and not have to get it shipped and not have to pay for shipping or pay for duties. So I'd say you could definitely make this for like $30 or even cheaper if you can find like more affordable yarn. So I'd say for a gift knit, that's a pretty good price. And versatility, I'd say, is pretty high. The thing with that though, I don't think there's as many sizes. So maybe a little bit less versatile in terms of like age range. So I don't think that there's like children's sizes for this. That's kind of the only downside, I would say. Highly enjoy this. We're getting to the end, folks. The last repeated pattern that I'm making. I made the Luma pullover this past year in the springtime, but it turned out too small for me, so I gifted it to my sister Sarah. I used really gorgeous alpaca yarn from Prairie Fire Alpaca, but I decided that I wanted to make it again for myself. I am trying to make this for myself for Christmas, for my Christmas sweater, but this is what I have so far. I've just started on the yoke. You can't really see a whole lot just yet. I'm about 15 rows down the chart, but it's looking super, super pretty. So I am actually making a project vlog on this, so I'm not going to go on about this too much because I'm going to save it for that video, but that is another repeated pattern, the Luma pullover. I'll just talk really quickly about why this is a repeated pattern for me. It is my first time reading a colored work chart, and I did find it, while it was challenging, I found it pretty relatively easy to do. I think for someone who's read a chart before, it would be so easy, and it's much easier for me on the second time around. So pretty high in that regard. Enjoyment, I loved knitting it the first time. Satisfaction, I loved the way it looked, but it was too small for me. So, you know, hopefully that won't be an issue this time around. But the finished garment is just so pretty. So I would say the satisfaction is high. A little bit of a caveat in that it didn't actually fit me. So, you know, that one remains to be seen slightly. The time that it took. So I'm just in the process of making it again for myself. So, and I am actually timing it, and I will let you know exactly how long it takes me. So the one that I made that I ended up giving to my sister, I started on April 14th, 2025, and I finished it on May 23rd, just over a month, I guess 5 weeks, which for a sweater, especially like a colorwork sweater when I had never done colorwork, that's pretty fast. Definitely a very feminine type of pattern. So versatility in that regard maybe isn't super high. I don't know that like every person would want to wear something that kind of like feminine leaning, but you can of course change that with the colors that you use. I don't think that it's super versatile in terms of sizing. Like I think primarily just for like feminine bodies, so a little bit less versatile in that regard. Affordability is highly variable. The one that I'm making for myself is, I think, the most expensive project I've ever made. I could tally up the cost, and in fact, maybe I'll leave that for my project vlog, but I am using yarns that I bought from Knit City, and I ended up having to buy another strand to hold with my main color. So pretty hugely expensive. So maybe not really like acing it in that category, but yeah, so you'll find out more about that project soon. All right, so that about wraps up the video. I hope that this gave you some inspiration for not only this like gift knitting season or gift giving season, but hopefully just throughout the year. You'll notice that like tons of these projects I actually gave as birthday presents. So hopefully this is a little bit more of like an evergreen video and not super holiday specific. And yeah, if you did like it, please do give me a like. Please subscribe. I would love to have you back. And I will talk to you next time. Okay, bye.